That's right, we are here at Sharp Facets Gallery on the 72 bypass. I got a great show here for you today. I have Ben Homeyer here with us. He is the president of 1101 Public Affairs right out of Columbia, and he does provide help with NFIB. And of course there's a lot of great issues going on right down there in our capital, right there in Columbia. So we asked him to come up here and give us some perspective. A lot from small business, but he sees things from all angles here. He has been the Director of Legislation for the Ways and Means Committee down there in Columbia. He has worked for McNair Law Firm as a consultant. He's originally from Philadelphia, and now he's back here in South Carolina. Welcome to the show today, Ben.
And thank you very much for having me, and I'm really excited.
You said this was going to be your first radio interview, but you've done TV. Usually it goes the other way, I think.
Yes, this is my first radio interview, and a little nervous about that, but I'm looking forward to it. I have done several on-air TV spots, especially around the holidays, and all for NFIB. As the state director, I get a lot of requests for interviews and such, and I'm happy to do so, and happy to be here with you today.
Absolutely. Now, you took over the position with NFIB when?
October 1st. J.J. Darby, who was the state director, moved on to another position. He's now in-house at Johnson & Johnson, but he's still a great voice that I turn to for help, and still a huge advocate for small business in South Carolina.
And, you know, well, let's start it off first. Now, you're from Philadelphia.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Now, how did you end up in South Carolina?
It's kind of a interesting story, and I know my wife is listening. We actually met on an airplane in Minnesota.
A likely story.
Go ahead. True story. I was coming home from I was a wildland firefighter for 7 years. When I lived in D.C. and in Pennsylvania, I worked for the Forest Service, and she was there for a trade group that she was representing, and got to learn all about South Carolina. I'd been here, used to go to Myrtle Beach for vacation, and things went great, and we got married. And after we were in D.C. during the crazy housing times when you could get an apartment the size of your studio here, so 500-600 square feet, and it was several $100,000. And she said, we're either moving to South Carolina or we're moving to Pennsylvania. And we came down to South Carolina and met with a bunch of folks, and I met with the speaker. He was the chairman at the time, Bobby Harrell, and he was looking for someone with an IT background and a policy background, and that was me, and I got a job. Was very excited. And
yes.
My wife got a job running the speaker's PAC at the time, and here we are in South Carolina, and couldn't imagine living anywhere else at this point. My parents now live here. My sister's down south now as well, and
it seems to happen. Once one group moves, other people follow into South Carolina. I've noticed that a lot.
Well, it is we have 2 days left of wintertime, and it's going to be 90 degrees, and I talked to my friends back in Pennsylvania and D.C., and they're still worried about snow and sleet, and we have the beach an hour and a half away and the mountains an hour and a half away, and
it's a perfect place.
To steal the governor's line, it is a great day in South Carolina.
Absolutely. It is a great day in South Carolina in a lot of aspects, but it's also a hard day in South Carolina right now. I think we are starting to make some good changes to things, but businesses are, small businesses particularly, small businesses, what is the percentage of small businesses in South Carolina, and what qualifies as a small business?
Well, depending on the definition, some folks look at small businesses less than 100, some look at less than 50. The majority of NFIB businesses, though, are less than 10 people. It's a lot of mom and pops. It's like yourself. You have a very small staff, but a dedicated. You are the chief cook and bottle washer. I'm the same way.
Yep.
And most folks are that way. The overwhelming majority, it's over 90%, and it's that way nationwide as to small businesses that are out there in the states and nationwide that make up the big fabric of our community.
And yet it's amazing that there's not more emphasis put on that good hard work.
Well, you see a big splash when Boeing comes, and love the fact that Boeing is here in South Carolina.
Absolutely.
It is fantastic because that also helps small business because there are spin-off
Absolutely.
companies that come. There's
And the tire companies that have come here.
obviously having the Michelins and the Bridgestones and having the Amazons. The jobs that create 5,000 employees are sexy.
Well, not only that, we need those.
Absolutely.
We need those, absolutely, because we'll never get unemployment down if we don't have some big chunks coming in. What always concerns me, though, is, hey, I've been here all these years. I'm a hanger-oner.
Well, and there are a number of folks that look at that and say, okay, we're going to give all these incentives to a company to come here, a Boeing to come here. They're going to get
Amazon.
fee in lieu,
That's
Amazon. They're not going to pay. They're not going to pay property taxes. They're going to have potentially a sales tax exemption on something. And then you have Greg Ryberg is a perfect example, senator from Aiken, who looks at the local business and has introduced a lot of legislation and says, well, wait a minute, I've got all these businesses that are here that why don't they get the same advantage
Exactly.
afforded to them? And it's a tough fight, and we continue to fight that fight every day.
Yep.
But I think we're really gaining in the UI changes last year were very beneficial. I think when they realized that.
After they scared the crap out of
Well,
everybody.
but if you look at those folks that don't use the system,
Right.
were looked at and said, we need to really take care of these folks that are the small mom and pop businesses that are held harmless, and because they don't tap into the system. So we need to make sure that we look out for those folks. And those that do use the system, well, they should pay to use the system.
Sure.
And so that's one way. Workers' comp reform is something that we're really helping to push that affects small business, and because you want to make sure that you have good comp commissioners in there that look out for business as a whole, but enforce the law as it's written, which helps small businesses out a great deal.
Sure. And, of course, one of the things that they are talking about is reducing the amount of unemployment. This is going to be a big issue, I think.
With South Carolina's down, I don't want to use the word downturn, there has been a downtick in unemployment numbers.
Yes.
And it is going to drop the amounts that you qualify on a federal level. But one thing you need to look at, while we had a great deal of UI reform last year, there is still a great deal more to do. There's a bill that potentially could get set for special order next week, Senate Bill 1125, that deals with fired for cause. And I'm looking at some of Ann's employees out there, if one of them walked in here and discharged a firearm, which would be against your policy, and
Yep, that'd be pretty big.
be against your policy, if they went before the panel at DEW, they could still be granted unemployment benefits, which means they would still qualify for federal benefits, which means it would go against your rates.
Yep.
And so what this bill would do is it would say that if you were fired for cause, you would not qualify for any state benefits, which also means you wouldn't qualify for federal. Now, should there be an economic downturn, you close your doors, your folks would obviously still completely qualify for all their unemployment benefits. This is not to go against anything where bad things happen.
Has to do with
But this
firing
is,
for cause, yes.
this is a case. I had an NFIB member that the employee was drunk on the job numerous times, was reprimanded for, ended up discharging a firearm many times, and still was given 10 weeks of unemployment benefits, which meant they got another 52 weeks of federal unemployment benefits. So the taxpayers ended up paying 62 weeks worth of unemployment benefits to this gentleman who broke the law.
It was a jerk, yes.
And so here's an opportunity for them to rectify that situation. And they're also looking at drug abuse or drug use. If you go and interview for a job and it's found that you use drugs while you're receiving your unemployment benefits and the employer lets DEW know, well, then you would stop receiving unemployment benefits because, again, you are knowingly breaking the law.
Right.
So there are things out there that we're really advocating on behalf of of business folk here in South Carolina and NFIB members and others that I think are very beneficial and would help out the community as a whole.
Absolutely. Well, we're going to be talking about a lot of these different issues. We're going to be talking about tax reform legislation. We're going to be talking about some of the new appointments that Governor Nikki Haley has made. So you got to stay right with us right here. We are interviewing Ben Homeyer right here. He's with NFIB. So if you've got a question, don't hesitate to give us a call, 229-7984. That's 229-7984. We'll be back. All right, we are back here at Sharp Facets Gallery talking about a lot of good stuff here, a lot of stuff that affects not only small businesses but individuals too. And of course, there's a lot of tax reform legislation out there. They've just changed things up. In fact, Lieutenant Governor Ard is no longer there. Senator McConnell is now the Lieutenant Governor, and from your area right down there is now the head of the Senate there.
Yeah, John Corson is the new President Pro Tem of the Senate. One other big change in my area is my House member is retiring, Jim Harrison, who's the Judiciary Chairman, so we're going to have a new Judiciary Chairman. We don't know, and we know Mr. Pinson from right here is stepping down, or well, is not running for re-election, not stepping down.
Well, there's a lot of that are not running, and people that have been, what shall we call them, the old guard, they've been there for many, many years. It'll be interesting to see how all this affects the future.
Well, absolutely. I think you're looking at an entirely new House and Senate, and this is the first election for the Senate where the Tea Party crowd is really out there. They made their voices heard in the last set of House elections 2 years ago, and I think they're going to try and do that again in the Senate this time. Those folks were spared because they weren't up for re-election, but I think you're going to hear a lot of noise out of that crowd, and so it could be a totally different place.
Absolutely, and not only that, so when in November when we have the elections, then going back in January, it's going to take them a while to get things on a par because there'll be so many new people involved.
Well, you're absolutely right about that. If you obviously want to have fresh voices come, and which is why our system is the best in the world, because you do get to make changes in your leadership. But you do need a steady voice out there that helps. I mean, in the Senate, there are what you said are the old guard. You still have your Hugh Leathermans, your Harvey Peelers, your Larry Martins that are good folks, that are good business folks. You have your Bobby Harrell in the House. You've got these folks that are looking out, and they keep coming back because they are so good for business that are out there, and you've got folks on both sides. You look at Harry Ott and Nikki Sessler that are Democrats but are very good pro-business type folks. And I think folks, because so many people do own small businesses now, and to circle that back to NFIB, is we want to have as many pro-business type folks that are there in Columbia representing us from all over the state. And I think we're getting there. We may still have some changes,
right?
But it's an exciting time, especially for what I do, is knowing all the new faces, and I'll be spending a lot of time on the road going in district. And for NFIB, we actually interview, along with some other business groups, any candidate that wants to be interviewed. We had several folks from this way, and that's great.
Absolutely.
Because this way you get to be more informed, and being able to make an informed decision on who you elect is the most important thing that you can do as a South Carolinian, as an American citizen.
What do you think about the election this year? Is this going to be the most important election ever on the national and on the state level?
Well, I can't say ever because I don't know, but from in my lifetime, absolutely.
Okay.
From a business perspective, what President Obama is doing is, it could be a death blow to business. What the NLRB did, in my opinion, illegally, and many others' opinion, what they tried to do there in Charleston, what they're trying to do with the Affordable Care Act. NFIB is a named plaintiff in the suit against the government for
How
the
did you get to
Affordable
be
Care
that? I thought that was only states that were coming up against
This
that.
is one of the first times in, as far as I know, ever that this has occurred, and we are joined with a number of other states, and the arguments start next week,
Yep.
the 26th to the 28th, and that could be one of the most landmark decisions that the Supreme Court ever makes. I mean, it's one of those things that affects every American and every business that is out there. I mean, from a state standpoint, you could be looking at 500,000 new people on January 1st going on the Medicaid rolls. And it's the attune to over $1 billion of new money. And where's that money have to come from? Well, it comes from business and comes from the citizens.
No, you've got it wrong. It comes from the government. Let's get this right. It comes from the government. It doesn't come from business, does it?
Well, absolutely it does. Because where does the government get their money?
Exactly.
So it's, it all gets passed on.
I don't think people understand that. Do you think that everybody understands that we are actually paying for this?
No, I think people think that the government just prints money. I mean, you look at over
They've
the
got
last
a great record of printing money.
over the last 4 years, we've printed what, $10 trillion to cover the deficit that we have. I mean, you can. It's just unbelievable the amount of money that is out there that we owe other countries. We borrow money from other countries to do things here.
Absolutely.
I mean, China owns so much of the United States at this point because of the money that we owe. Yet we won't go into the Keystone. We won't build the Keystone pipeline. We won't,
start
drilling offshore in South Carolina, where they have these huge deposits of natural gas. You're looking at so many areas now where the feds are getting involved. There are over 4,000 regulations that are pending now at the federal level that affect business, from farmers that are going to have a cover over the back of their combine as they're rolling, so no dust goes into the air. Because
how about this one? This one, as I heard about down there in South Carolina, that all businesses must have their restrooms open to the public. This one just boggles my mind.
That bill actually did not go anywhere.
Thank God.
It died in subcommittee, thankfully. Somebody probably got turned away because they weren't, using, they weren't shopping somewhere. They just wanted to go use the restroom. Well, thankfully you have the right to refuse service to someone that just wanted to come in and use the bathroom.
Exactly.
But so they were going to, if you didn't have a public restroom, you were going to have to build a public restroom. I mean, the cost that this would be out there.
I know.
There's another huge bill that's out there right now, the Pollution Control Act. It's called the Smith-Land case. And the Supreme Court reversed over 60 years worth of precedent and decided that anyone can sue anyone under the Pollution Control Act. So if I'm driving behind you down the street and your car emits something, well, I can decide that I'm going to sue you. I don't have to go to DHEC. I don't have to go anywhere else because you released anything organic or inorganic into the atmosphere. Now think about that. Organic or inorganic is everything.
Absolutely.
And
that's like a restaurant putting out some fumes here or something. Yes.
And at the hearing before the Supreme Court, DHEC had a good line. They said you can inhale, but you can't exhale. But out of 3-2 vote, they decided that this was going to go into effect, and now we're fighting hard to get this reversed back to the way it was. I mean, there were no cases brought in the last 61 years against this, and now all of a sudden there are all these, because it's a big trial lawyer issue.
Okay.
And it's one of those things that there's somebody sees money to be made, so they can sue anybody for any reason. Now, I mean, if you walk past a restaurant and you don't like the food, well, I can, somehow you're releasing something into the atmosphere.
Wow. That gets into big, that's just frivolous stuff that'll just tie up the courts.
Well, and it ties up businesses. I mean, I now have to prove that I didn't do this. The onus is on me.
Isn't it interesting? It used to be that we were innocent until proven guilty. That kind of has changed, though, hasn't it, Ben?
It really has. It used to only be the IRS that was that way. You were guilty until proven innocent. Now it seems to be the court system is getting to be that way, and it's just so tough for the average person that's out there that works hard and now has to go spend weeks in court. I mean, there are folks that could potentially lose their business because they now have to prove that some water vapor that went into the air, or the fact that they fertilized their lawn and somebody didn't like that.
Unbelievable. You know, we are here at Sharp Facets Gallery. We are talking with our NFIB rep here, Ben Homeyer. He is going to be right with us for the next half hour, but we're going to hear South Carolina news, a word from our sponsors. We'll be back. Give us a call if you've got a question, 229-7984. That's 229-7984. All right, well, we are back here at Sharp Facets Gallery. Let me tell you, the sun, it is a-shining out there. Beautiful, beautiful day. And right now it is 77 degrees, fair skies out there. Supposed to get up to the mid-80s today, possible thunderstorm later this afternoon. Tonight, partly cloudy, and what are we looking for tomorrow? Some more of the same. So looks like spring has sprung a few days early here. While we're at it, let's check the price of gold and just see what's happening with gold today. Last time I checked, it was about $16.64. So moving in the right direction. If you've got it to sell, you know where to come, right here at Sharp Facets Gallery on the 72 bypass. Why should you come here? Well, because we buy at the highest prices. You know that, I know that, so come see us today. Sharp Facets Gallery, gold is $16.64 and silver is almost to $33, $32.99. So come see us today. You'll get the highest price. If you're going to sell, why not sell it for the most right here at Sharp Facets Gallery? We have Ben Homeyer here with us. Interesting conversations about stuff that maybe you hadn't thought about. We are talking about what is happening not only in D.C., but right here in the state. You, of course, represent the NFIB. You know, how is it to be a lobbyist? As a job, a lobbyist. That's got to be an interesting job.
You know, it is, and for myself, being a contract lobbyist, it's even more interesting because I represent a variety of different groups. I don't just represent NFIB. Mm-hmm. If you are a single issue person, if you represent the hospital association, and obviously all you're ever looking out for is things related to the hospital. I mean,
sure.
I'm all over the place. You have to, one day your best friend becomes your worst enemy because you find yourself on opposite sides.
Right.
Although you hope that it's
just
only
business.
there for work, just
yes.
business, and,
right.
and not personal. But I love it. I really enjoy when the members are in session. The almost gladiatorial aspect of it from time to time. It can be fun. But you know, you battle out every day for your clients to represent them the best that you can. And
it has to be difficult, though, because you have to have clients that are at least aligned along the same lines, don't you?
Absolutely.
Absolutely. I mean,
you have to worry about conflicts of interest. You can't represent oil drillers on one side and people that are protecting the whales on the other. It just it doesn't work that way. But you know, I'm very lucky. I have a great group that I represent, and you know, at this point, I couldn't imagine doing anything else. I really enjoy it, and I think I'm pretty good at it. This is my 4th year out in the lobby, and you know, my state time was so invaluable to lead me to out there. Mm-hmm. But it's great. I really enjoy it.
So you know the ins and outs down there in Columbia.
I do, and that's, you know, and with these new members that'll probably come in, you gotta start getting in early with those folks and knowing the ins and outs with them and who they are and what they care about. And you know, you find such strange bedfellows at times. You know, you're with who is the most hardcore right person and the hardcore left person. Well, all of a sudden they agree that we shouldn't tax a widget. You know, and all of a sudden you're bringing these two people together, and so you have to know what people care about. And you know, my whole thing is you can only ever lie to somebody one time, and after that they will never trust you again. So whether you agree with somebody's position, you tell them your position, you tell them the truth, whether they want to hear it or not, and you have to go from there. The truth as I see it.
Exactly.
Because you don't want to, you know, and all you can ever ask back from a member is that they tell you the truth. You know, whether they agree with you or whether they don't. If they're honest with you and say, Ben, I could care less what this does because my folks that I represent agree with this, and you say, thank you very much, I appreciate your time. I'll be back tomorrow to talk about this issue, which they may agree with.
Sure.
But so you got to always be upfront and honest with these folks, and you tell them the good and you tell them the bad.
Sure.
I mean, because they have to make an informed decision. You know, you frame it,
Sure.
but you got to do it in a very truthful manner.
Absolutely. Now, we haven't really talked about NFIB and what the advantages are for being part of NFIB. We, in full disclosure here today, I must tell you that Ann's Entertainment Vision and Sharp Facets are members of NFIB. There, how does that sound? That sounds pretty official, doesn't it?
I think that might have gotten some more members to NFIB right there.
Okay.
You know, it's a great group. We are the voice of small business in South Carolina and in the United States. We have 4,500 members here in South Carolina that I represent. And the great thing about NFIB is everyone has a voice. I mean, we send out a ballot every year on what we think are going to be the top issues. And, you know, what you think may, you know, one of the issues that we balloted were sales tax exemptions.
Mm-hmm.
Well, you know, you would think it would be a slam dunk that people would want to get rid of all these sales tax exemptions. Well, the way the ballots are coming back, that may not be true.
Mm-hmm.
And we are going to support our membership as a whole and follow the direction that they want to go. It's not just me saying, look, I want to go down this road. It's you all have a voice. Everyone who's an NFIB member has a voice, and I get calls every day from somebody that wants to know about a candidate, wants to know about a bill, wants to know how, you know, if this passes, what does this mean for me?
Sure.
And, you know, I'm happy to answer any questions I have. We've got just a great group of sales folks that are out there that deal with businesses every day. You know, some folks don't want to call the state director. They call the sales guy that they know.
Mm-hmm.
And the sales guy calls me, and, you know, I try and get back to them right away so that they can convey the message. Sometimes it's an email. Sometimes, you know, I would sleep with my iPhone if my wife would allow me, because it goes off at midnight and all of a sudden I hear that buzz and I was like, all right, get up. And because, you know, as a small business owner,
Small business owners work 24/7.
well, that's what I was going to say is a lot of times, look, if I want to go to my daughter's ballet recital and it's from 3 to 4, well, if I can go do that, I'm going to do that, and then I'm going to work from 9 to 10 at night. You know, it's one of those things that you know, you're always keeping track of your inventory. You're keeping track of, you know, what you need to do the next day. And
the amount of paperwork I need to do would be the biggest thing.
So it's those things that as a small business owner that you're always working, and I like to think that I'm always working and available to help you with what it is that you might need, whether it's on a local level or a state level. On a federal level, we do a lot of work with our delegation, and we have such a great delegation as a whole that they care about what NFIB believes in, and they've all pushed it. Right here, Jeff Duncan's a former NFIB member.
With his auction business.
His auction business. Mick Mulvaney has been super supportive. He talked about NFIB on the floor of the House. You know, so we're very
Joe
lucky.
Wilson is down there in your district, and
Yeah.
I had him on last week. Yep.
Joe Wilson is great. We actually just did an event. We try and do a coffee with your congressman event with our members. Try and have a small thing in district when we can get there. Have 15 to 20 members come out, and the congressmen want it to be open to whatever they want to talk about.
Sure.
You know, if it's a reg that's coming down, if it's a tax issue, if they want to just complain about society. I mean,
You know, one of the things though that's nice is to be able to look the person in the eye that represents you and have a conversation. We have all of our congressmen and senators on this show, and I really feel that I know at least what they're thinking and where they're coming from. Whether you agree with it all the time is not the issue, but the fact that you know where their heart and soul is, I think that's important.
well, looking people in the eye is so important when you deal with them, especially in politics. I mean, body language and you know, as you're squirming around, but you want to know that somebody has strong convictions as to who represents you, and as they're sitting here talking to you and giving you their side of the story, like you said, you may not agree with it, but if you have these strong convictions, it means a lot.
Sure.
And you come back and you fight again, and you
Live to fight another day.
You know, we are that kind of people here in South Carolina.
We are. We're having a great time here. We're talking to Ben Homeyer right here on WLMA. We're going to go back and talk about some of maybe the important issues that are coming up right down there in Columbia. So why not stay right here with us? You know, they're talking about tax reform here. They're going to fix that garden hose, so they say. We'll see if they are. Hey, don't you go away. This is WLMA. We'll be back in just a moment. All right, I'm here at Sharp Facets Gallery. We're talking positions and politics and all kinds of good stuff right here with Ben Homeyer. He is president of 1101 Public Affairs. How'd you come up with 1101?
The State House sits at 1101 Gervais Street, and I spend all my time there at the State House. And
where's your office at?
My office is out of my house, actually.
Oh, okay.
I keep my overhead as low as possible. Again, as a small business owner, I try and do that. And you know, my wife has a business with her name in it, and then it's Homeyer Strategy Group. And the Ethics Commission said because for what she does, probably having the name, if it was Homeyer Public Affairs, would not be good. We don't want to confuse anybody.
Sure.
So I had to get creative, and as I was looking around, would it be Spotted Salamander, our state, amphibian, or something like that. And I spent so much time at the State House and have for the last 11 years, and I just saw the address on the website, and I was like, went and looked, like most small business folks, there's no website, there's no domain registered anywhere, and I said, this is perfect.
And so, anytime you want to find Ben, you can just go to the State House there. You'll probably find him.
Yes, ma'am.
That's right. All right. Well, now, if somebody wanted to call you, Ben, how would they call you to talk to you about an issue?
There's several ways. The easiest way is 803-429-9558 is my cell number. As I said, I tend to sleep with it if possible. The main number for NFIB is 803-254-1476. And it gets answered by some very nice folks, and they make sure that if I'm not there, that they make sure the message gets to me. But or Ben Homeyer at 1101publicaffairs.com is a simple way to send me an email.
Absolutely. Well, I know that people are going to want to see about what's going on. What do you think? Of course, next week the Supreme Court takes up the Obamacare law, and we will see where that goes. They've set aside 6 hours. I read that they have gotten more Friends of the Court briefs than anybody could ever look at than any other case that they have gotten coming in. So we know that's a big one, and that'll be all over the news. But what's maybe something that's right below the radar that nobody is thinking about that could become a big ballyhoo?
Well, from a state level, as you mentioned, I mean, we're looking at major tax reform.
Mm-hmm.
And there were 7 bills just introduced in the House, and they cover everything from lowering business tax rates from 10.5% to 6%, and then also on 6% down to 5%. Looking at flattening the income tax rate, we have a 6-level income tax rate, which
well, that's the garden hose, fixing the garden hose.
Fixing the garden hose.
Yeah.
One of the big things that I see that's not related to tax reform is dealing with tort reform still. I mean, the state has done major tort reform work last year, but there are still bills out there like the False Claims Act that if you do any work with the state of South Carolina, so say you sell things to the state of South Carolina, and jewelry.
That would be good.
So Ann is selling jewelry to the state of South Carolina for whatever reason. I'm not sure, but she's selling jewelry to the state. And
flag pins, beautiful flag pins.
Beautiful flag
there you
pins,
go.
absolutely.
Okay. All right.
And they decide that someone says you're defrauding the state of South Carolina.
Okay.
So you then have to prove that you are not. So it's one of those things that somebody decides they want to make a claim, and they're a litigious society, and so now the burden is on you, and it's one of those things that is just a killer. It's really bad for doctors.
Can't move our society forward under the presumption of guilt on everything, and that is the way our society is headed. You're guilty until proven innocent. That's
correct, and it should not be correct. I mean, if you want to bring suit against me, then you need to go and prove as to why you're doing it. I mean, from your rural doctor, that's a great doctor. He probably still makes house calls. He's a
general practitioner,
SCMA guy, supporting the medical association. He's supporting the community. He's the doctor.
Gives away a lot of his time and everything.
And he receives Medicaid money because the patients there are poor folks. And somebody says, I think I got charged too much. So anyone can come bring suit against him under what's called a key tam provision. It's a whistleblower provision, because they could actually get a portion of the settlement. Well, this guy has done nothing wrong. This doctor's been following the letter of the law, but they now have to show that they did nothing wrong, instead of someone showing that they did do something that was against the law. And so every day that this doctor's in court, well, this doctor is not providing service to the community and helping out folks that are truly sick and that truly need. And so maybe they all now go to the emergency room, which jacks up your costs. And again, it circles back to saying, who actually pays for all this stuff? And it's you and I, and it's the citizenry of South Carolina that are, good, hardworking people. And so I think that's huge. But I mean, for us, UI reform, the unemployment insurance work, the tax reform is so huge. I mean, from an NFIB standpoint, if we could get a statewide business license tax, it would be the happiest I think I would ever see my members.
What would that actually be?
Well, if you look at folks that are, say you're a realtor, and I use Charleston as an example. Charleston has 30 municipalities that are surround in Charleston County. Everywhere you put up a sign, you have to have a business license.
A city license.
So, if you're in Mount Pleasant, you're in downtown Charleston, you're in wherever.
Right.
And so everybody wants their $75, their $100, their $200, and it changes all the time. And so you have to factor in, $5,000-$10,000 just in paying these license fees to the local government.
Sure.
And so, and that circles back into, the wholesale tax reform. When you lower the income tax and the it takes money out of somewhere and you're pushing on the balloon. Well, obviously the balloon has to expand somewhere.
Sure.
And so will it be the businesses that have to pay for it? Will it be local government says, well, I don't want to charge a business license tax to everybody because Richland County does it, so I live in Forest Acres, I don't need to do it. Well, that's money that comes out of Forest Acres, so will they truly do that?
Well, it's like we were talking about Act 388.
Yes, ma'am.
How that is going to affect with the changes coming on there. Here in Greenwood, we have a problem because we have so many nonprofit businesses that have taken money and taxes off the rolls as they have then gotten properties and made improvements and this type of thing, but they pay no taxes.
Well, and so that affects everybody as they raise the millage, and there's less money out there because Lander owns a shopping center, and so they're not paying taxes on that. Well, you're paying taxes here on your business, and so they're going to come after you and say, we need some more money.
Exactly.
And so it's going to come from you, and there are numerous bills that all of a sudden become this unfunded liability. And when 388 was passed, it was passed with good intentions, and it probably helped a lot of people. Do I like not paying school operating on my house? It's great, but I look at it from a larger standpoint. Maybe the old system was better. Maybe we need to look at that and potentially make other changes, because we need to make South Carolina as competitive as possible for everyone and every type of business. And the way 388 is right now, I'm not sure that is the case.
Absolutely does that. That is true. Well, Ben, there are so many more things we could have talked about. We had to pick out a few. There's a lot going on down there in Columbia, though. And just Governor Nikki Haley, how do you think she's doing? Just give us an idea.
Well, I think any governor in South Carolina has a tough job. The state is a legislative-dominated state, and you're handicapped from the beginning. Now, some folks say that's good, and others, I'm sure the governor and Governor Sanford tried very hard to increase the role of the executive branch. I think she's got a tough job. I think she's doing a very good job. But I think there's always room for improvement in whatever you do. I know personally I could improve on some stuff, And, you know, I think she's doing a wonderful thing with her foundation that she's looking to do. I think she fights the battles that she feels need to be fought. I may not agree with where she is on the port, but she, again, does it. She looks in the eye and says, this is what I believe, and this is what I believe is best for South Carolina. Well, the General Assembly spoke and said, no, that wasn't the case.
That is true. That's true.
You know, they overturned her bill unanimously in both bodies.
Sure.
But it's one of those that she believes she was making the right choice for South Carolina. And
you got to give her credit for standing up for what she believes.
Absolutely. And you know where she stands, and you can't ask for more. I mean, there are always things that, you know, I may agree with her on, I may not.
Mm-hmm.
There are several that I'm on both sides of the aisle. But she's working really hard for workers' comp reform, which NFIB wholeheartedly supports. She's appointing, I think, good people to commissions and boards. Mm-hmm. And she's got a tough job, but she's working hard.
What do you think about, we don't have much time left, but what do you think about what's happening with the Budget and Control Board? Is that going to go through? It looks like it is.
I think it is. I think when you get into the heart of the bill, to be honest, I don't know that it does a whole lot.
This is WLMA right here in Greenwood. It doesn't do a lot. Well, it'll change the power, won't it?
Well, I don't. In some aspects, it does,
yes.
But in some places, the power would still rest with the board. I mean, you know, should this 5-member group run the fleet of South Carolina? Probably not. You know,
we're one of the few states that have that left as a way to do business, correct? Or
we are the only state that has this 5-member board.
Okay.
It is something truly unique to South Carolina, and frankly, we're a unique state.
Yes.
Is it good or bad? It's like bus privatization. We're the only state that does that. You know, we run the state school buses. Is that good or bad? Everybody has an opinion, but the board plays a role because it is such a legislative-dominated state, and the legislature is not always in. If the governor had more power, would the board be needed at all? Probably not. You know, if you look at a state like Texas, where the governor has almost absolute power, the legislature meets every other year, and it's for like 60 days.
Right.
Would Governor Haley like that? I'm sure she would. Would the 169, we're short a member right now, like that? Absolutely not. You know, our Constitution is set up with the legislature to rule the state, which they answer directly to a smaller group of people than the governor does. It seems to work for us on most cases. But the board is looking at definitely some changes, and there are changes that are needed. And the board realizes that they don't need to run buildings. They don't need to run cars. They don't need to make every minute decision that is out there. And so the governor should be able to have power to do things that help the state.
Absolutely. Well, listen, Ben Homeyer, it has been an absolute pleasure to have you here. We'll have to have you back again.
Well, Ann, thank you very much. And this was my first time, and this was great. I'm glad I could spend it with you this hour.
Absolutely. This is WLMA right here in Greenwood. We're going to join the news in progress. Don't you turn that radio off. You listen right there. American News Network is coming up after the news. Bye-bye, everybody.